welcome everybody to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Thanks for hanging out with us, having some beer and conversations. I am Tim Dennis. Brian Hewitt, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's another day, Tim.
It's another day in the neighborhood,
and I am here.
Right.
I am drinking beer, and that's really all I have to say about that.
That's all I got to say.
How you doing,
that.
Tim?
Fair enough. I'm fine, man. I'm fine. You know, been a busy week at work. I've got a really big deal. Would be, yeah, I think I'm safe to say it would be the biggest single deal of my career.
Okay.
And it's me and one other person are competing for this. I'm a recruiter, for those who haven't heard that before, and it's a big senior vice president position. So the pressure's on with that one, Brian. You guys pour one out for your homie.
When you land one, you can buy the fanciest of long beers to celebrate.
I can. The longest of long beers.
That's right.
So,
the very
has anybody
longest.
done that for an April Fool's joke, like a meter long can or something like that?
I want to say, yeah. I want to
like
say
I've
somebody
seen
did
that.
that at some point, like an exceptionally long can. Yeah.
The longest of long beers, yeah. Mike Nate, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, the weather here in Atlanta has been really great this week so far. And so just really enjoying being able to get outside for my job and, enjoying being able to breathe. We had some nice weather recently that flushed all the pollen out of the air. So being able to operate outside without having the, ductwork all clogged up is nice.
Yeah. You know, we went within a week's time. We went from near 90 degrees, like 15 degrees above average, to freeze warnings.
Mm-hmm.
That's the swing that we made within a week.
Did you get the tornado warning in the past week? Because I did. I had a tornado warning in my area. Yes,
I got one. Like a couple weeks before, we were under a warning when the bad storm came through here.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple weeks ago. 2-3 weeks ago. Anyhow, I get hit pretty bad then. I saw a neat graphic. Do you guys all know the difference in a tornado watch and a warning?
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think so.
So a watch essentially says conditions are likely for this to happen. A warning means that they have seen rotation, and that may be on radar or something like that. So it's not saying, hey, there's a tornado on the ground. It's saying, look, there's rotation that looks like a tornado. And I saw someone that had a graphic. It said, tornado watch, tornado warning, and on the tornado watch it had a taco shell, taco meat, cheese, this, that, and then on the right side it had the taco, so like the prepared taco. That's the difference. So it's saying conditions are right for this to happen versus it's happening.
I need a taco watch. Not a warning. I want the watch. Like, it has been observed that there are tacos in your area.
That's the warning.
Be ready.
That's the taco warning, Brian.
Yeah.
That would be
I want the taco warning.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So we did have a point in time. I was looking on the outside. I was like, wow, there's the tornado. I think it was a warning. I think it was I can't remember for sure. I think I took a screenshot of it because it was so weird. But in either case, there was a point in time where it was like super. It rained a lot. It was really overcast, really cloudy, and then it was like quiet air. I'm like, if this was a tornado, we'd be in the eye of it at the moment because there's like nothing. It's like really dark, but nothing going on. And then I think there was some more stuff after that. So we passed through the eye of something or other, but it wasn't a tornado.
That's always freaky when that happens. Like when it's just a horrendous storm and then it's like very calm and beautiful for a minute. You're like, I'm going to die. I'm definitely about to die.
This is how they take you out. They give you that one last second of this is lovely. And
there you go.
You're gone.
Yeah. You know, seriously though, after a bad storm moves through, because everything's kind of sucked into that system, the weather usually is pretty nice behind a storm. So, just have that to look forward to. Anyhow, Brian, what are your beers of the week?
Yeah, so I pre-gamed with a Bitburger Premium Pils, which we all know is liquid magic from Germany. Delicious German Pils. Love it. They started putting that together in different packaging. I've been bemoaning the fact I could only get the can variety in 4-packs. Now they have an entire, I think it was a 12-pack, but they were actually all long beers. So I've got like a half case of long beer Bitburger. So I'm very happy about that. But I had one of those. And now I am drinking a collaboration between Creature Comforts and Our Culture. It's called Brew for One, MJF. It is a fonio lager. That is that West African heirloom grain that's really good for the environment and is a possible source of revenue for folks, growing grains in Africa. So it's for a good cause as well. You're just using the grain is for a good cause, but also the proceeds of the beer go to support the Michael Jackson Foundation to further education and diversity in the beer industry. So all around, it's a good beer. It tastes good too. It's a quality lager. It's coming from Creature Comforts. It's going to be good. And also, I'm going to get into a Parish Techno Snowman later on, possibly with the Patreon folks after the show. Depending on how quickly I drink through this lager, maybe I'll get into it sooner. But yeah, Parish Brewing's Techno Snowman, New England double IPA with Motueka, Nectaron hops, and something called Quantum Terpenes, which I looked into, and that was just a fancy pants way of extracting terpenes from hops and preserving all of the volatile aromatics so they get into the beer. So I'm looking forward to that. I have not had that one yet, so that's pretty exciting. How about you, Tim?
Them terpenes. So Brian, I also too am having the Creature Comforts Our Culture collaboration this week. So courtesy of you, you grab some of them, hook me up with one of those. So having that, always nice to support beers with a cause. It's a good excuse to say, I'm going to drink this beer because I'll be doing something good if I do that. So
I'm fascinated by the grain too. I really am. It's just that's part of it for me. Yeah,
absolutely. So Nate, what is on your beers of the week?
So I had this beer a couple weeks ago when we were at that beer festival. So from Wild East Brewing, I'm having their Digital Dissonance, which is an English brown ale that they brewed in collaboration with Goodword Brewing, which was the host brewery for the Little Beer Fest that we attended. And then following up, I've got a beer from Equilibrium, which is called Lupus Salictarius.
Salictarius? I believe that's a Harry Potter spell, isn't it?
Probably.
I don't know. But anyways, that is a triple New England IPA, and that was a collaboration beer brewed with Mortalis. Very excited for that one.
Very cool. Lupus Salictarius. Ancient Greek, Latin, Harry Potter spell, all kinds of. What does Salictarius mean, Nate? Did you look that up by any chance?
So it literally translates to Wolf of the Willows, and they did it to pay homage to the hops they use on a daily basis.
That's right. Lupus or lupine, I think, is wolf.
I was going to say it turns your beer into
disease.
If you say it turns your beer into wolf saliva, because isn't that Salictarius? I mean, that looks like saliva to me.
Possibly,
yeah, wolf drool. Yeah,
wolf drool.
Delightful. Yes.
All right. Sounds great.
Which the hops they regularly use in this beer are Citra, Nelson, and Galaxy.
Cool. Good stuff, man. Yeah, Galaxy back in the Galaxy craze. What was that? 15 years ago? Like every beer needed to have Galaxy in it.
Was it that long ago?
I was thinking back. Well, that was back when we started. Brian, it's been over a decade since we started homebrew and had our little homebrew club and all that. So that's
true.
Decade. So that would have been. Yeah, so we're probably looking around a decade ago.
8-9 years ago, I'm thinking. Because I think it was like Galaxy got super hot, I think towards the end of our homebrewing. So 14, 15 maybe?
I disagree with your assessment, but that's fine. We don't have to agree.
I'm honestly just guessing. I have no idea.
I know. Well, Brian, moving along, we're going to start off with some good news. And it says consumers are still prioritizing on-premise visits.
Yeah, so the beer sales numbers continue to be bad, and nobody knows what's going to.
Wait, you said good news, and you start off with that.
This is the caveat. I'm setting the stage. The beer sales numbers. There are articles about it. It's not good, and there's articles out there about the price of your beer is about to go up. It's the same rehashed headline for all the articles. So nobody knows what's going to come about from the current tariff-a-palooza. It's changed just today while we're recording it, and I don't have the exact details on that. But despite all the gloomy stuff and the economic uncertainty, the good news is consumers are still making a point to go out and have a drink or two on premise at your bar and restaurants. Half of consumers went out for a drink in March, a 3% increase from February, according to on-premise market research tabulator CGA. And 77% of consumers went out to eat in March, the same as February, And it's going to be the same for, in the future. 77% of consumers plan to continue going out to eat, and 47% plan to go out for drinks in the next month. So around the halfway point again. In terms of priorities, regular visits to bars and restaurants was a high priority for 24% of the people they surveyed. That's coming in right behind, essential expenses, clothing, and domestic vacation. So it's very high up there on people's radar, apparently. 1/3 of respondents would go to bars and restaurants even if they were short on cash. And that number rises to 50% for those aged 21 to 34, which surprises me a little bit that they would prioritize that. But there we go. CGA also found that more alcohol consumers plan to switch to more expensive brands rather than cheaper ones. For beer, 72% do not plan to change their brand. They're going to keep drinking the same beer they drink now. 19% plan to buy more expensive beer, and only 9% plan to go cheaper with their beer. So that's a good sign. I mean, people have prioritized. We're going to go out. We're going to have some drinks. I'm going to drink my beer, and I might even up my game a bit in terms of beer. So that's a good sign, despite the fact that the sales aren't great these days. So
yeah, I'd say if you got close to 20% of people saying that they're, they've got the funds to get to up their game a little bit, that's not too bad.
Yeah, and people that, I mean, maybe I like their priorities, but 50% of people I'm surprised it's this high. 50% of people 21 to 34 would go out to a restaurant and bar even if they were short on cash. I'm like,
that's surprising to you? I mean, think of your 21 to 34. It was like that was your. I mean, 34 may be a little on the high end, but those 20s to probably 30, I think it's almost a mental health thing. I'm going to go out, I'm going to have a drink, I'm going to grab a bite to eat, maybe see some friends in that. So I think that no matter what's going on in your life, short of I'm going to go out and grab dinner and I can't pay my rent, it's like, hey, money's a little tight, man, but I'm going to go out.
Yeah.
Maybe they're following into that 9% that's drinking cheaper beers.
Probably. My thought is this kind of flies in the face of everything we've heard about Gen Z and how they want to be in bed by 7 p.m. and they need a blanket and they hate carbonation because it makes their tongue all stingy. Yeah, it's not cozy. It's not cozy enough for them, in the mouth. So I hear all this and then I see that and I'm like, well, maybe there's hope. Maybe they're not all lost. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Brian, speaking of expensive beers, there was a record this week for some Breweriana, which for the life of me, that's always just a horribly difficult word to say.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
But had a record sell for a beer can that kind of looks like a bottle.
It does kind of look like a bottle when you say that. Yeah, I wasn't really thinking about it, but the auction sale of a vintage beer can from the 1950s has set a new world record for a single piece of brewery advertising. And I've never really thought about cans as brewery advertising, but they really kind of are. They are kind of like a poster for the beer you're drinking. The can in question is a rare Chief Oshkosh Crown Tainer, which is why it kind of looks like a aluminum bottle with the top and the actual twist. It's probably a twist.
It's like the old style cone cans.
Cone cans. Yeah.
But this one has it's got a cap on it like a bottle would.
Yeah. So it sold for $111,000 and $111,150. Excuse me. I don't want to forget that $150. They earned that at Morian Auctions. The can is believed to be the only known example of its kind that is in near perfect condition. And if you have one, go sell that immediately because you're going to make some money. The previous record sale was $93,600 for an undisclosed bit of Breweriana. We don't know what it is. Also set by Morian Auctions. The winning bidder of this can is a collector from Wisconsin, the home state of the Chief Oshkosh beer brand. Something interesting I picked up from the article is Morian Auctions is the only licensed auction house in the world that specializes on beer cans and alcohol-related advertising, aka Breweriana, like you said, the most awkward word in the world to say. Like,
it is.
Yes, it should just be beer artifacts or something like that. At least we could say that. But
so I could see a collector wanting a piece. Our friend Ken collects Georgia Breweriana. And this is a true story. Ken literally bought the side of a barn one time because it had an old, I think it was Atlantic Ale was the name of the brewery. I think it was post-Prohibition, but or both, right? It was pre-Prohibition. They did the ice thing during Prohibition.
They did.
But anyhow, they've been closed for a long time. I think they went through the 50s and 60s, but they had one of those old painted sides of a barn with the painted advertising like you used to see, and he got it, and he said he reassembled it at his house. So I don't know what the side of a barn would cost. Maybe he got a good deal on it, but that's how serious people get about their brewery collectibles. And I have a tiny collection, and I bought a pre-Prohibition, I think late 1800s beer bottle from a Georgia brewery, and I paid like $100 for it. And to me, I'm like, this is a crazy amount for an empty beer bottle. But someone paying $111,000 for something that for it to sell at auction for $111,000, that means there was definitely more than one person that was willing to pay an exorbitant amount for this beer can. But and if you've ever seen these old cone top cans, judging by the picture that was in the article, it's in excellent shape. A lot of these you see do have a lot of rust and stuff on them, so finding one in really good shape. I wonder if that crown is original, like if that is sealed with beer in it.
That's a good question. I don't know. The picture does, and one of the things that Morian does really well that was noted in the article is their art, their photography of like the Breweriana is top notch. It's part of the reason people will go to them to sell their stuff, because that's a good picture. That's well taken.
It is.
I mean, you can really clearly see, and they said it's near perfect condition. I'm like, there's not really any dings in the paint on it. I mean, the cap looks like it's never been touched. So it's entirely
cool. It's
possible
cool
there's beer inside there. Yeah. Not good beer, but beer.
And something interesting I found out, that doesn't necessarily raise the value of things. I think Ken was telling us, that having a full container for a brewery collectible person doesn't raise the value. Now, a lot of guys that are into the collecting, they'll bottom punch the can to empty it, so they don't pop the top. But having a full can does not raise it in value to collectors, or most of them anyhow.
I'm actually well versed in the bottom punching of cans, because I still meet up with Ken periodically and drop off cans of local Georgia beers that he can't get around to all the places, and everybody's releasing so much these days. So I'll just, if I got some interesting Georgia beer or just an interesting fun can that I think he'd find neat, I throw it in a bag, and I meet up with him. We do lunch, and I give him the cans, and he'll give me some that he can't drink all the beer he picks up. He buys a bunch of beer with the intent of I want this can. I don't care about the fluid in it. He'll give me a few cans and hey, if you could just bottom punch those. I'm like, no big deal. I've got a church key, and I do that. So I actually drink some of my beers, not very many of them, from the bottom of the can instead of the top, just because
do what you got to do.
I'm giving it to a collector. I'm like, I don't care about the can too much. I think they're neat, and I support the collecting of cans. I think that's a cool pastime. I just want the beer inside, because it's frequently some good creature comfort stuff. That's
I have a fairly decent sized collection of bottles and cans. They all still have liquid in them. But,
that's that too. I'm not trying to collect those. I'm trying to drink those.
Brian's trying as much as he can to drink down that collection.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, Brian, we had a couple of stories last week on various brewery acquisitions. You've got a footnote to one of last week's stories that we talked about with Great Divide.
Yeah, last week we talked about Wilding Brands buying Great Divide as part of that discussion, we were wondering what's going to happen with Dry Dock Brewing. Prior to the sale, Great Divide was making all of Dry Dock's beers and RTD cocktails, and they weren't mentioned anywhere in the article. Since then, we've learned what's happening to Dry Dock. Left Hand Brewing is buying them. The owners of Dry Dock will get an equity share in India Peaks Brewing, the parent company of Left Hand Brewing, and they will move into roles in sales and promotions. So it sounds like a good deal for Dry Dock. This will give them access to distribution in 45 states. I don't think they had that with Great Divide. I think they just had somebody that would contract brew for them. So you might start seeing their beer if you don't already. So things are working out for them is what it looks like. But they will no longer have any association, as far as I can tell, with Great Divide at this point in time. So there's the answer if you were wondering. I'm not sure how many people were, but I was. So
have you seen their beer anywhere? Are you familiar with them?
I don't think I've ever had it before.
I have either. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because they were mentioned like a year ago in an article about breweries that were teaming up. They were pooling resources to, I think Dry Dock was paying a certain amount. It was basically contract brewing, but they'd gotten rid of their brick and mortar stuff and were just kind of part of Great Divide, except different, except legally separate, I think. So it was kind of
interesting
part of that story. And then when they sold, I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to that interesting partnership that they had that was in that article about, greater efficiencies with brewers collaborating. So, yeah. So that
it
closes that loop basically.
It's interesting to see the way these various breweries collaborate and, contract brewers that, we've talked about those in the past. A lot of good breweries start out as contract brewers. I know Wild Heaven here in Georgia started this contract. Monday Night Brewing did some contract. There's a place up in South Carolina called Thomas Creek that I think a lot of the Georgia breweries like to do that we're doing that. But we have on the Reddit Atlanta Beer subreddit where we have a series being posted there about Georgia's defunct breweries. May have mentioned it before, but one was mentioned is going through the list alphabetically. And a recent one was O'Dempsey. Remember O'Dempsey, Brian? So
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of love for O'Dempsey. Yeah.
They were always contract and they did, I think they used Thomas Creek for their brewing, but they had a Russian Imperial Stout called Your Black Heart. That was just fantastic. And I actually don't know what the sentiment on contract brewers is now, but I know we are probably going back 15, 20 years here. They used to be a dirty word. Like if you were a contract brewer, people, kind of wrote you off in that. And they didn't think the quality was as good. Beer was that good. But the ones from O'Dempsey's were good, especially that Your Black Heart. And I don't know exactly when they ceased production because they were always a little under the radar. And every now and then you'd see them pop up. And they had, what was there? Inukshuk? Was that their IPA or their red? They had a red ale, an IPA, and then a stout. But the stout was really good. And I actually came across a bottle of stout maybe 2 years ago that I had stashed back and still excellent. But
I still have a bottle of Your Black Heart from a 4-pack I bought sometime after they closed. And the comments, I think this timeline is right. The comments said they stopped production in like 2017. And I think that 4-pack I bought was from a place that has since closed and been sold off and whatnot. But I found one on the shelf, a 4-pack of that. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And that was like years or two later. And I had it for a while and I drank a few of them out of it. And I'm down to like the last bottle, but I still have it. And it's like, yeah, it's nostalgia. I used to go to beer events, the beer fest, the big brew fest. I couldn't find the word for brew fest in my head. And one of the things I would always look for around here was like, oh, okay, where's O'Dempsey's at? I like to go by there. And the only way you could really reasonably get Your Black Heart very frequently was just go by there and you drink some of it, just because it wasn't a lot in distribution. They were under the radar. So it was a fun thing to do. And they were nice people. So I always enjoyed hanging out, talking to them, having a few of those, and then going around and trying all the other new fun stuff. So
I have a fun story to share about Randy Dempsey of O'Dempsey Brewing. Brian knows what. So
yes,
Brian and I were at a local brew pub here again, several years ago, Cherry Street Brewing, and Randy Dempsey was there from O'Dempsey Brewing. And we got to chat and we sat down, and it was, me, Brian, and Randy at the table. We were just chatting beer and brewing and other stuff that he did. And that he's a musician outside of that. Would not speak to me directly. Would literally not speak to me directly, to the point that if I asked him a question, he would pause and then look Brian dead in the eyes and answer my question. Like, I don't know what it was, but he just absolutely refused to speak to me. So interesting fellow, Randy. There.
Maybe he was doing some interesting drugs or something like that, and it wasn't sure you were real. He recognized me, but he wasn't sure if you were real.
This guy's not real. Like that lady on the plane that one time. So he's not, that guy back there is not real.
Exactly. So, he's not real.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyhow, so moving right along, beer, Brian, everybody's always talks about it's healthy, especially back in the olden days when water was not supposed to be that good of a choice. people would drink beer. But Brian, amazing news here. Over in the UK, there was a beer recalled over a potential health risk.
Yeah. And before I get into this, you guys ever watch that show Top Gear? Familiar with that one?
I've seen Top Gear.
Yeah, I like that show. I'm not a big car guy. So Jeremy Clarkson from the show, he owns the brewery that's involved in this story. And I didn't know that, but apparently I was reading is that brewery is very popular, and it's like Sainsbury, like all like major chains sell his beer. Like it's everywhere. I had no idea. I didn't know what he was doing beyond the car shows and the car stuff. But anyway, the Food Standard Agency in the UK has issued a recall notice for 2 beers created by Hawkstone Brewery, which is owned by Jeremy Clarkson of Top Gear fame. The reason they gave for the recall is undeclared wheat.
Oh, okay.
So the idea behind the recall is these beers pose a risk to people with celiac disease or gluten intolerance. So that doesn't seem like to be the same level of risk for, maybe an announcement like this is maybe exposing people to peanuts that have peanut allergies. But okay, whatever. The beers in question are Hawkstone Black and Hawkstone Spa Lager. The brewery has since issued an apology for the situation, is offering a full refund to anyone who wants one. So my initial thoughts were what I was saying earlier, a recall for wheat. And then I just realized that people that have issues with gluten will also have problems with the barley that's in the beer. So I'm not sure what the danger here is, but I guess maybe a very specific wheat allergy could be at risk there. I mean, I don't think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the UK, all of them mentioned that they use barley in the beer. Maybe
I know there's certain things that, like, even if you ever look at the label on a loaf of bread here, it will say something like processed in a facility that handles tree nuts or something like that. So even if it doesn't have nuts in it, it'll let you know that this happens there. So I guess it's something, and I know that some products in America will say that, contains wheat, soy, milk products, eggs, nuts, all that, to try and cover anybody that's, whether it's a personal choice, a vegan, vegetarian, lactose intolerance, celiac, what have you. So I'm assuming if they recalled it for undeclared wheat, that is definitely a rule in the UK, even though, Brian, you got to make these rules for, like, someone buy a regular loaf of bread and they'll be like, hey, this has got gluten in it. You're like, yeah, it's bread. If it didn't say gluten-free in there, that's kind of like, hey, this beer's got, now I guess wheat maybe is not a given, but, if your issue is the gluten, you should kind of know that that's kind of the default for beer.
Yeah, the celiac and the gluten intolerance, both of those are covered by the barley that's already there. So this is very strange to me, but at the same time, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing something like this happen to beers that have undisclosed lactose in them, because there's a ton out there that do. And the ones that aren't saying it are all pretending like, oh, no, our beers are naturally this amazing. It's just how we brew them. It's like, no, you liar. You put lactose in them to sweeten them up and thicken them up. So, yeah.
And see, that's a reasonable expectation, Brian, because lactose is not an expected standard ingredient in beer.
Especially in an IPA. Yes.
That's right. So that would be something like, I guess wheat is, I think wheat would be kind of could be expected as a possible ingredient, maybe not as default as barley, but lactose is definitely not one that you would assume was probably or possibly, well, maybe now you would. It's
fairly common. I mean, you've got various wheat beers. You've got a variety of them. Isn't a Dunkel's a wheat? Isn't Dunkel have a good amount of wheat in the
if it's got Weizen, in there, then that's wheat. So yeah, your Hefeweizen, your Dunkelweizen,
Weizenbach, all that stuff. Yeah. So it's a very common thing, and a lot going back to homebrewing. It was frequent to add a small amount of this and a small amount of that, maybe a little rye, maybe a little wheat. It gives you a different character to the beer. That's not uncommon. So I'll bet that there's a lot of that going on that people don't know about. But here's the thing. The celiac people already having problems with beer and are probably already avoiding this. So in this particular case, I think this is all a lot of hubbub over nothing.
Safety's sake, man.
Yeah. Unless there's a very, very specific wheat thing. And I could believe that. People are allergic to all kinds of stuff. So
of course.
Could just be wheat for some people. And that, okay.
Got to be safe, man. Got to be safe. Don't want anybody getting hurt out there. I like wheat in a beer. I like it adds a little to the mouthfeel and that. And a wheated saison. Our homebrew saison did use a fairly good portion of wheat in the recipe.
And that was beautiful. And that wasn't our idea originally. We got it from other saisons that did the same thing. And I like wheated bourbons too. And that's distilled so that theoretically would not give you the same problem as beers, because I don't believe any gluten makes it through that distilling process. But I don't know.
I think that's actually been a topic of debate of whether or not, like, talking about bourbon and things like that. It's like, are you safe if it's distilled? And they think I heard one time they said if you've got gluten sensitivities, you're probably all right. But if you have true celiac, that they would recommend you just avoid anything, even distilled. So yeah, that's what I remember.
Okay,
cool. Well, Brian, before we move along, how about we give a shout out to our sponsor?
Yeah. So springtime continues to be weird here in Georgia. We have hot days with record pollen one day, and we got tornado warnings the next, and it's all over the place. And that's kind of the traditional spring here in Atlanta. And speaking of things that are all over the place, let's talk about my Truck and Tap beer picks for this week. At Truck and Tap Woodstock, I'm going with Fonta Flora's Hot Beard IPA, not just because it has beard in the name, but that does, go for it in a positive way. It's been ages since I last had a fresh IPA from Fonta Flora, and I do like seeing their beer back in town. I think it's been gone for a while. Hot Beard is an American IPA that is all about intense Simcoe, Citra, Amarillo, and CTZ hops. It sounds delicious. I'm guessing that one's got some hoppy oomph to it. Like, they're not holding back with that one. At the Duluth location, I'm getting Jester King's El Cedro, which is a saison hopped with piney, citrusy American hops, aged on Spanish cedar spirals, and bottle conditioned with Brettanomyces. And if you've been listening for very long, you know about our ongoing love of everything with Brett and saison and farmhouse, and so this is a can't miss beer for me. I would have to have this, and I may have to go up to Duluth just to try it. At Truck and Tap Alpharetta, my pick is Angry Chair's Imperial German Chocolate Cupcake Stout. As you can probably guess, it's a pastry stout. This one is made with, of course, surprise, lactose, but also coconut, cacao, and vanilla. But it still comes in under 10% ABV, so this is not as reckless as some of the other stouts I've recommended. Unless you're thinking about calories, I can't help you out there, but this one's totally worth it, so you should just get this one, not worry about that part. And finally, at the Lawrenceville location, I am going with Reformation's Big Dippa IPA. It's a seasonal double IPA featuring crush hops, which are said to impart dank notes of guava, cantaloupe, and citrus. I really like the sound of that. I skipped over a couple of other really interesting IPAs purely because of those hops and those notes in it. So I want that. I want that in my mouth now. So, or if you're hearing this on the day the show drops and you feel like mixing it up, Truck and Tap is throwing a Pink Moon party featuring cocktails made with Empress Gin and Fever Tree mixers. I don't know anything about the gin, but I like a good gin and tonic, and I like Fever Tree mixers. They're good. So check that out. And to see what else is happening at your local Truck and Tap, including what beers are pouring and what food trucks are serving, check out the website truckandtap.com. And thank you to Truck and Tap for your support.
Thanks, Truck and Tap. You guys are the best.
They really are.
They are. Indeed. Well, Brian, good news for lovers of long beers and macros.
Indeed. Molson Coors has just announced the release of a bold new take on their much-loved Blue Moon Belgian White. The new beer is called Blue Moon Extra, and it has an ABV of 8%. The original had an ABV of just 5.4%. It's still brewed with Valencia orange peel and coriander like the original. If I'm assuming that's going to be important to fans of the original. And according to the description on Untappd, it reportedly has that same flavor you've come to love, but with a bit more of a kick. And the really fun part is the beer will be exclusively available in single 19.2 ounce cans, like Tim was teasing. That's right, long beers. So the idea here was to offer a higher ABV 19.2 ounce option for people who like stovepipe cans, and but they want something other than IPA. And my prediction is this is going to work out really well for them, because it's almost all IPAs right now. Like, all of the stovepipes are basically IPAs, some variation of them, very few options. And yes, I will be trying this at some future Long Beer Friday when I find it. I will shamelessly get one and enjoy it. But speaking of Untapped, Blue Moon Extra currently has a rating of 3.38, so they're not loving it on Untapped for whatever that means to you. I also noticed there's something called a BA Blue Moon Extra on Untapped that is reported to be a Belgian strong golden ale that clocks in at 11.3%. Based on the pictures, it appears to only be available at a Blue Moon tap room in Colorado. So I am currently ISO High Gravity Blue Moon. That may be a Belgian strong golden ale. So that's very interesting.
Colorado, Brian.
That may be the tap room.
Take a trip.
Maybe the tap room, the Blue Moon tap
that's
room.
Right. We've got a Blue Moon tap room here.
Yeah,
now. We do. That's right. That's right.
I saw this and I'm like, maybe I'll get to try that. That'd be interesting. I'd be down for that.
Okay. We need to call our buddy Chad that was a brewer there and see if he can give us a scoop on what's going on, because rumor has it, same team there. So, check in, see if he's still brewing for them and see what's up.
Yeah, I have to think that at that level, that I think they could knock out a pretty good one. I'm down for it. I really like to try that. That got me looking through all the other stuff Blue Moon's done. I was looking and I checked into a surprising number of different Blue Moon variations over the years that I completely forgot about. So, there's the possibility that despite it being Blue Moon instead of Terrapin, there might be some good stuff to drink there, man.
Who knows, man? See what goes down. Yeah. Well, Brian, we love to talk about what's got the cheapest this or the most expensive that, whether it's airports or ballparks or what have you. So this week that we're pulling up here, and this comes to us from Visual Capitalist, we're going to look at the states with the most expensive cases of macro beers.
Yeah, so we have the complete list, and the ranking is based on the average price of either a case of Bud or Miller Lite. So they're not really picking specifically one or the other. The data was sourced from the wholesalers. Sourced from wholesalers and reflects the numbers as of January 2024. I had something weird in my mouth there for a second. So it's a little old. It sounds a little old, but I think this is the latest data they had to work with. So, and it's not too bad. It's from last year. But additionally, these prices exclude sales taxes and other fees like recycling. So this is purely the sale price of the beer minus what your state might do on top of that to bring in a little extra money. So the top three, are there any guesses about which state has the most expensive price for a case of beer? And keep in mind, we're talking Bud or Miller Lite here. Anybody?
So I'm just going to say, not a commentary on that, but January 2024, with the way grocery prices and stuff happened last year, I imagine if you scale it, it's probably still accurate, the information, but I bet the price figures are
I'm sure. I'll bet it's like a buck or two more, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out California.
Okay.
You know what? I'm going to go for the low hanging fruit. I'm going to say California, Alaska, and Hawaii.
California, Alaska, Hawaii. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah.
Well, my first thoughts was, is this for all 50 or contiguous? Because low hanging fruit, Alaska and Hawaii, and then I was going to go with New York.
Okay,
that's a good guess, Nate. I thought about that too. So I think we've covered our bases there. Brian, tell us what's up.
I was going to say the one thing with New York is I think it's expensive there because of the taxes, but I don't know that for a fact. But yes. So the state with the most expensive case of beer is Alaska, ringing in at, according to the latest numbers in 2024, $33.62 per case. So if it's gone up a little bit since then, there might be a reason. So, it proportionally speaking, it probably should be at the same spot.
These numbers, if that's not what you're finding on the shelves.
The second most expensive state is Wyoming at $28.78 a case, which I think was not one either of you picked. And I don't think this is one anybody would expect, really. No. But the third is Hawaii at $24.17 a case, which I think both of you expected. So Alaska and Hawaii both were expected. It's thought that the sparse population in both Alaska and Wyoming are why the prices are so much higher there. Distribution is just more expensive when everybody's more spread out. In contrast, more populous states seem to have lower prices, suggesting that brewers may accept lower margins to sell at higher volumes. So as for the cheapest, and I can already tell that people are cheating here, I'm not even going to ask you what's your thoughts are.
That's Nate. I seem so to tell y'all what's talking about. We have a run of show sheet that we look at here, and Brian changes his font colors so it looks like hidden text in there. And Nate is cheating by going into the document and highlighting.
That's right.
Stuff before Brian could. So that's what's going down. So Brian, I didn't cheat. Nate cheated. But my guess would be that the cheapest would be Illinois, and their average price would be $16.43 for a 24
You know what?
pack.
That is one heck of a guess. No, that you nailed it. That is perfect. Yeah. I would not have thought, but when you talk about more populous, like dense areas where distribution would be easier and, you'd sell more beer. So the price you would need to sell each individual beer could be lower. It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're looking at. So I imagine they didn't say the actual shipment of beer to these places. So I would imagine Alaska and Hawaii are also penalized a little bit because it's expensive just to get it to that state.
Yeah.
Unless the beer is being brewed there. And I'm not 100% sure it is, but
even on McDonald's commercials say when they run their specials, they're like prices may be higher in Alaska and Hawaii, things like that.
Exactly. It
costs a lot to get things there. Expensive stuff. Well, cool, Brian. Do you remember where Georgia ranked? Do you remember where we are on the list? Was it mentioned?
It's in a graphic, and we weren't too bad. So we're at $20.25 a case. So we're
mid-level.
I think we're middle of the pack. Yeah, Wyoming's way up there, and I'm surprised we didn't see Utah in there on the cheap side. But they're cheaper than us, but they're well more expensive than Illinois. And that's population distribution, I think. I never really thought of Georgia as being a super dense state overall, but I guess the Atlanta area it's kind of like one massive sprawling opportunity to sell beer, basically.
Yeah,
so.
I don't remember what the whole state's population is, but I mean the bulk of folks are within the extended metropolitan Atlanta area. Pretty big concentration. Last I heard, we'd surpassed 6 million in the metro area here, and I think the whole state is like 10, if I remember right.
So which do you think has more expensive beer, Florida or Georgia? Because that's an interesting one.
Georgia.
More expensive in Georgia, you think?
I would think it's more expensive in Georgia. And I know that Florida doesn't have do they have sales tax? They don't have income tax, do they? They don't have
it's income tax. They don't have.
Okay.
I think they've got sales tax.
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they do.
Yeah. I don't know, Brian. Fill me in.
You are correct. Georgia does. I would have thought it would be Florida because it's a much larger state and there's more distance between places. But no, I think that I don't know why, but it is considerably that we're $20.25 a case. They're at $18.59. Even more interesting, you go to South Carolina, $16.54. Like they're actually only slightly more expensive than Illinois. I have no idea.
That's a good deal. I mean, we're talking in a 24 pack, you're looking like 75 cents a beer there. At that. So yeah.
And they're a neighbor that's easy to get to. Maybe we'll have to make runs up there and grab her beer.
Right.
It may be more economical.
It might be worth it. Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Seriously.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but just not really related to beer. Population of Georgia is 11.18 million. And as of 2023, again, some outdated info here, 6.3 million in the Atlanta metro. So, more than half within the Atlanta metro for the whole state.
And that's probably what's driving the majority of the price of our stuff. Yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Brian, speaking of Utah and their, cheap beer, good news, and I can't wait to hear the full details on this, but according to your headline, people in Utah will have beer delivery to their car.
Yeah, this is what I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Utah's governor signed a bill into law that will make it legal for people in Utah to have beer delivered to their car, which sounds strange for Utah, but it's basically the new law permits people buying groceries online to add beer to their order and have that delivered to them in the parking lot there. So it's not an actual bring beer to my car and I'll make a run for it. Under the current law, a customer would have to go into the store to have their alcoholic beverages, get them separately, which kind of defeats the whole purposes of the curbside service thing that everybody's gotten used to. But I think Utah has a long way to go before it's going to be legal for them to get those orders delivered directly to their house. So they still have to go there. They just don't have to get out of the car to get their beer and possibly food.
Okay. But it's so crazy how much difference it can be from state to state on what's allowed. Like in Arkansas, they have drive-through liquor stores, unless the laws have changed. It's been a long time since I've been over there. But you could go through and you'd be like, give me a fifth of Jim Beam and a 2 liter of Coke. And they'll be like, you want a couple of cups of ice with that? So, and they'll do that right there at the drive-through. They'll give you the whole thing there. I'm surprised they don't mix it up for you and hand it out the window. Like,
now that you mention it, speaking of mixing it up, there's another part of this story related to Utah that's interesting.
What else is going on in Utah?
That the law makes this other thing legal. It's called the straw test in bars and restaurants. So mixing up drinks specifically. It's the bartender's practice of taking a small straw and dipping it into a cocktail, pulling it out and tasting it to see if they've mixed the cocktail right. That is currently illegal in Utah.
Wow.
And it will be until May 7th when this law goes into effect. I can't even believe that is specifically illegal, because I've seen so many bartenders do that, mixing things, tasting it like, no, that's not right. I need to add a little bit more of this. I'm like, that's just like what a chef does. That's just how you do it. You taste it to see, like, nope, it's not right. I want to make sure they get the thing that's right. Yeah, illegal. You just have to I pour it in and hope, pray to whatever, and that it's good and that the customer gets it and loves it.
I think I heard that this law changed, but years ago, I was in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. This was my college days. We did like spring break at Myrtle Beach, the Redneck Riviera there. I think that's Panama City, or maybe there's 2 Redneck Rivieras.
Could be.
Anyhow, at the time, the clubs there had to use mini bottles to make cocktails, so they could, measure how much is going in. Like, and the most they could do, you could get a double. But that would be it. So you get your 2 mini bottles. But it was interesting going into the bar and seeing a rack on the wall just loaded with mini bottles there. So
that seems so like horribly wasteful.
Inefficient, wasteful.
All of these, and I'm assuming they were plastic, and like, at one point they were glass. I'm like, that's still not great. But that's like, it's just, for every drink you're throwing away that much plastic. I'm like, it's just going
at every bar, all around
water and our soil and into our bodies, and just don't worry about it. It'll be fine. Everything is cool. No big deal.
So much trash.
Terrible. Yeah. What a terrible idea.
Utah.
They ought to have a machine that mandated that would measure it out. Somebody could make a machine that does that doesn't require you to throw away a plastic bottle every time.
I think those have existed for a while, where you have the measure. And I think even you don't have to have a machine. Like, they have a cap that goes on a bottle that essentially it's got a float in it or something that kind of does a metered, a measured pour or whatever.
Yes, it fills up a cup in between the two, and that's your drink. I'm like, that's existed forever. I'm like, that's why. Why wouldn't you do that?
Lawmakers. And I think, speaking of Utah's laws, though, it again been a minute since I heard about this, but I think they were called Zion curtains.
Oh, yes.
But they had these, basically it was like a glass wall that any bar where they mixed drinks, you had to have this glass wall between you and the customers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, they couldn't see people mixing alcohol out there. That was
so it wasn't just glass. It was actually obscuring your view of them making
frosted
drinks.
Yeah, it was like frosted glass where you couldn't see. Like, you didn't want to see that devil's liquid being poured around back there.
If you see
and now that they're tasting straws, Brian, geez, heathens.
I know. That's I love that was specifically mentioned in the law that they were making that legal. I'm like, oh, those poor bartenders. Why would anybody live there? I mean,
yeah. Have you ever been to Utah?
I have, actually.
It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
A beautiful looking place.
Nice.
Yeah.
The people are nice. The area is gorgeous. I went out there went skiing with the buddy. I'm going to call it skiing because I was on a mountain and there were skis on my feet. So I believe that would qualify. And we drove over to Wendover, Nevada, to some casinos, across the Great Salt Lake and all that. So it's a pretty area, man. Clean air, nice people.
True.
interesting religion, for the most part.
Yes.
But overall, yeah, Utah's an all right state.
I did want to go see Salt Lake. I drove through it a cross country thing, and I was there temporarily, and I did drop by. I want to say, what's the brewery that makes polygamy porter? Because I actually stopped there, and I think I did see the Zion curtains, and I think they were actual curtains. I think it was an actual weird curtain situation. And I'm like, I don't know.
Wasatch?
I think so.
Wasatch, yeah.
I think I was physically there, and I want to say that was around 2007, doing a little trip across the country. And I stopped at a bunch of different places, and that was one of them. I don't remember all the places, but I remember that one because I still have a magnet on my fridge of polygamy porter that I picked up there.
I have seen that magnet.
Really amusing.
Yeah, I've seen that magnet there. Yep. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. That about wraps it up for our show this week. We appreciate you hanging out with us. If you enjoy what we do here, we would love it if you would tell a friend to tune in and check out the show. If you really, really like what we're doing, go over to patreon.com/beer guys. Give us some support. We're going to get you into our Discord server to chat with us, hang out. You'll be able to come to the after party, as we call it, and we'll send you out some swag. So thank you so much for tuning in, y'all. We hope that you have a very good week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.